Part 149. Blessed to have each other in this life, Shao, your wife is born again. Author, Hua Liao. Chapter 1491. Mu Zi and Zhang Si originally invited Tang Tang to a meal to show their gratitude, but this guy insisted on going home to find Gu Liang, looking like he was going to die. There was no other way, Mu Zi had no choice but to send her home. Tang Tang got off the car at the door of the house, walked into the courtyard, and saw Tong Liusan coming out from a distance. Her brisk footsteps unknowingly became sluggish, step by step, getting closer to the Taoist priest. When he was 2 or 3 meters away, the Taoist priest stopped. Although his face was indifferent, his eyes were astonishingly powerful. When he opened his mouth, he was extremely peaceful and natural. Fusion Wu Yang Tianzun, since he is a different kind, why bother to be greedy and angry, it is better to leave quickly. Tang Tang stared at the other party coldly, with a gloomy and cold aura, and replied bluntly, whether I leave or not, it's none of your business. If you dare to play tricks, I will kill you. Tong Wu's expression froze when he heard this, and he watched Tang Tang pass them by in surprise, feeling a little uneasy in his heart. Taoist Miaoqing beside him shook his head and sighed, I'm stubborn, I'm stubborn. Tang Tang found Gu Liang in the study, and as soon as he saw him, he rushed towards him and entangled him like an octopus. Gu Liang laughed, what's the matter? Did Mu Zi bully you? Tang Tang didn't speak, just hugged his neck tightly, her cheek pressed against his shoulder, the breath on his body made her feel at ease, the slight bitterness of cigarettes in the clearness, and a little bit of her smell. Gu Liang felt her depression, but couldn't figure out the reason, and asked again, what did Mu Zi ask you to do? Did you quarrel? No, Tang Tang whispered sullenly, I just couldn't see you all morning, and I miss you so much. Gu Liang laughed softly. When he laughed, there would be a slight quiver in his throat, which was a very pleasant sound. Tang Tang licked that place, stalking him like a kitten, and kissed him bit by bit along the line of his jaw. Gu Liang's eyes darkened, and his voice was slightly hoarse, Tang Tang. She kissed the corner of his lips, staring at him clearly, as if infinitely attached, don't you miss me? Gu Liang raised his hand to pinch her chin, and gently stroked the white and delicate skin with his fingertips. Her eyes became more blurred and soft, her lips were moist and attractive, and even the breath she exhaled was sweet. He was fascinated by her, and his voice was very low, why do you act like a baby like this? He bowed his head to kiss her, the familiar lips and teeth intertwined, the softness and moistness inside was fascinating, the numb throbbing kept accumulating on the tip of the tongue, and then melted little by little, melting into each other's bodies, warm and comfortable. Gu Liang carried her back to the bedroom, closed the door, and the rapid breathing gradually lost its rhythm. I did it twice, the process was long, I can't remember how many times I climbed to the top of the clouds, and I can't remember how many times I flooded the ocean. At the end, Tang Tang was soaked, as if I was fished out of the water. He hugged Gu Liang stubbornly and didn't let go. More, she closed her eyes and panted. Gu Liang laughed, are you going to squeeze me dry? Lifting her limp leg, seeing that it was really red all over, she couldn't help feeling distressed, leaned over and kissed her, and sighed softly, I don't know how many days it will take to be so tender. Tang Tang was a little confused, and murmured like a raving in a dream, Gu Liang, don't treat him anymore, okay? What nonsense, he smiled helplessly. I probably understand why she is worried about gains and losses, but how can any normal person tolerate those foreign objects growing on her body? He sighed softly, picked her up and went to the bathroom. When cleaning, she was not reluctant, like a small animal that lacked a sense of security, pulled him and asked, will you still want me after it's cured? Gu Liang was startled when he heard this. The original intention of this marriage was not pure. Although he is indeed fascinated by her right now, but in fact, he is not sure whether this kind of obsession is enough to overcome her evil identity. Tang Tang didn't wait for a reply, her voice was flustered, Gul Yang. He came back to his senses, looked at the girl in his arms, his heart as stable as Mount Tai, couldn't help feeling a little sad, and sighed softly, I don't want to part with it. Blessed to have each other in this life, Mu Shao, your wife is born again. Author, Hua Hua Liao. Chapter 1492. Tang Tang cuddled up against Gul Yang and soon fell asleep. Gul Yang gently pushed her away and pulled her fingers, covered her with a quilt, and left the room with gentle steps. After going to the study, Tong Wujiang told Gul Yang exactly what happened when Tang Tang met the Taoist priest, including the conversation between the two, verbatim. Gul Yang was silent for a long time, and said, she has a childish temper, so she will inevitably be jealous. My subordinates are worried that my wife will harm Daoist Miao Qing, Tong Wu said cautiously in a low voice. Gul Yang frowned slightly, and sighed softly, let's have a look again. The next day, the Taoist priest came to give Gul Yang the injection as usual. Gul Yang rolled up his sleeves, and laid his strong forearm flat on the table. Daoist Miao Qing moved down 3 inches along the mark made by the cinnabar, ready to use the needle again. Daoist Miao Qing pressed his thumb on his arm with a dignified expression, may I ask Mr. Gu, did anything unusual happen after the poor Taoist left yesterday? Gul Yang was puzzled, why did the Taoist priest say that? After Pandeo used the needle yesterday, the evil thing clearly shrank down by 3 inches. Today, when I probed again, it only shrunk by 2 inches. If I remember correctly, someone must have nourished the evil thing secretly, otherwise it would not be like this. Daoist Miao Qing stared at Gul Yang with burning eyes, and his expression was also stern, Mr. Gu, my advice is hard to hear. The flowery beauty you see in your eyes is nothing but pink skulls and dream bubbles. Don't be obsessed with not knowing it. The Taoist sentence meant Tang Tang, and Gul Yang knew it well. At this time, half of his heart was burning and half was cold, and the feeling in it was really indescribable. After a long silence, Gul Yang sighed, thank you for the reminder, please use the needle. Daoist Miao Qing said no more. After the needle application this time, Taoist Master Miao Qing ordered the cinnabar seal again, and said to Gul Yang, Fuxian Wul Yang Tianzun, in case of rebirth, please allow Pandeo to stay here today, I wonder if it is okay. Gul Yang pondered for a moment, then nodded and asked, what are the taboos on the Taoist priest's diet? The Taoist priest said, don't eat cattle, mullet, swan geese, and dogs. These 4 things are loyalty, filial piety, integrity, and righteousness. Gul Yang called the servants to come in and arranged for the Taoist priest to stay. He knew that if this Taoist lived here, he would probably have conflicts with Tang Tang, but he also hoped that Tang Tang was just being confused or playful for a while, and that if a Taoist priest lived here, Tang Tang might restrain himself. Gul Yang's thoughts were deep, even looking at his arm that had returned to normal, he still couldn't feel relaxed. Staying in the study to deal with a few company affairs, hearing crisp laughter from outside, Gul Yang thought for a while and walked out the door. Before he could go downstairs, Tang Tang had already run up with her skirt fluttering, and threw herself into his arms with flowers in her arms, filled with fragrance. Gul Yang, don't you think it's pretty? Her voice is charming, her smile is pure and sweet, and the love in her eyes is sincere, so how could she have malicious thoughts towards him? Gul Yang supported her waist, frowned and reprimanded lightly, how many times have I said, slow down when going up the stairs? She was out of shape, hanging on him coquettishly, pretending she didn't hear it. Gul Yang looked at the flowers in her hand. There were all kinds of miscellaneous things, including roses and impatiens planted in the garden, as well as dandelions and dogtail grass in the grass. The flower that just bloomed a few days ago was picked up by you. Gul Yang slapped her butt lightly. Tang Tang wriggled in his arms and asked, Gul Yang, why are there no crabapple flowers in the garden? I haven't seen a real crabapple flower yet, shall we grow a crabapple flower? Gu Liang said with a smile, it's enough to have a headache to keep you alone. Having said that, call someone to buy flowers. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Blessed to have each other in this life, Mu Shao, your wife is born again. Author, Hua Hua Liao. Chapter 1493. Begonia is a very common species among garden flowers, and if it is subdivided, it can be divided into many types. Because Gu Liang didn't ask for the size and color, the subordinate bought a small plant on his own initiative and planted it in a jade white ceramic flower pot. The soil surface was covered with a layer of moss, and it was very pleasing to the eye when placed in the room. Tang Tang liked it very much, carried the flower pot into the bedroom, pinched the branches and leaves, and plucked the petals. Gu Liang, how long can the crabapple flowers last? Gu Liang smiled, it's probably only a day or two. Huh? Only a day or two? Tang Tang turned to look at him with disappointment on his face. Why is it so short? Gu Liang smiled lowly, because someone keeps pulling and pinching it, so it won't live long. Tang Tang was stunned for a while. Before realizing it, she threw herself on Gu Liang furiously. You are talking nonsense. Gu Liang was thrown on the bed, and asked her with the corner of her mouth upturned, what nonsense did I say? You're just talking nonsense. Tang Tang blushed in embarrassment, and gnawed on his shoulder for a while, muttering incoherently while gnawing, grab you, pinch you, grab you, pinch you. Gu Liang turned over and pressed her down, grabbed a pair of troubled little hands, and kissed her lips deeply. He was a little moved, and every time he touched her, it was like an addiction, insatiable. Unexpectedly, the Taoist's admonition came to mind, and my interest dropped a bit. I sighed softly in my heart, lifted her body and let go of her. Gu Liang straightened his clothes, got up and walked out. Tang Tang sat up from the bed, and asked in confusion, Gu Liang, where are you going? Go to the study, there are still some things to deal with, he said lightly, with a gentle smile on his face. Go to bed first at night. Tang Tang looked at him ignorantly until he left the room. That night, Gu Liang stayed in the study until very late. When returning to the room, Tang Tang had already fallen asleep. Gu Liang also lay down after washing. The little person beside him seemed to smell the smell, closed his eyes and slipped into his arms, clung to him softly. The corners of Gu Liang's mouth curled up unconsciously, thinking, what a stalker. Holding her in his arms, he adjusted his sleeping position and fell asleep with his eyes closed. The night was dark, and there was silence all around. He felt a slight movement, and opened his eyes in a half-dream and half-awake. The room was pitch black, with a faint fragrance floating. After a while, the vision and sense of touch fully came to life. He saw Tang Tang lying on his side, holding his finger in his mouth. Her long bangs covered her eyebrows and eyes. Gu Liang couldn't see her expression clearly at the moment, but felt that her finger was extremely cold, as if it was frozen. He moved slightly, and if Tang Tang felt it, he stretched out his fingers and raised his head. The pure and charming face still looks innocent, but there is a ghostly black mist at the corner of the mouth, which fades away. In the darkness, the two looked into each other's eyes without speaking. She didn't say what she was doing, and he didn't ask her what she was doing. If he helped him eat some of that thing like before, he should feel severe pain, because she said that when it hurts, he will also hurt. But now I feel nothing. He also remembered that she said that if she ate it, it would eat her. All kinds of thoughts are disturbing, like catkins flying randomly, seemingly light, but can suffocate people. It doesn't seem to matter whether she is eating or feeding. Tang Tang. After a long silence, Gu Liang asked her in a low voice, who took your name? Tang Tang seemed not expecting him to ask this question. She was stunned for a while, then carefully snuggled into his arms, and said softly, "Don't you like this name?" "It's okay, I can change it, Gul Yang, do you like it? Whatever name I will be called, okay." "No need." Gul Yang closed his eyes and replied in a low voice, "Let's call it Tang Tang, it's a good name. Blessed to have each other in this life, Mu Shao, your wife is born again." Author, Hua Hua Liao. Chapter 1494. Another day later, Daoist Miaoqing used needles for Gul Yang again. He held down the position of cinnabar and moved it down 3 inches, his face suddenly became ugly. The Taoist priest was furious, this evil obstacle. After finishing speaking, he stood up abruptly, took out the ghost-shaping stick from his bag, and made a gesture to find Tang Tang. Gul Yang pressed the opponent's shoulder, "Miaoqing Daoist. Does Mr. Gu still want to protect her?" The Taoist priest looked cold and serious. "Right now, your right hand is like a house on fire. I pour water into it, and she pours oil into it. If you continue like this, your hand will be destroyed sooner or later. Lose." Gul Yang said, "Master Dao, this is my housework. Why are you so confused? She is deliberately not letting you get better, so she holds you hostage and wants to control you for the rest of your life." Gul Yang's expression did not move, he remained calm. "Master Daoist, use a needle." Taoist Miaoqing sighed again and again, "What's the use of applying needles? One will grow and the other will grow, when will it be the end?" "She was just being stubborn for a while and lost her sense of proportion," Gul Yang explained. The Taoist leader had no choice but to put away the ghost-torturing stick and give him another needle. Gul Yang was silent the whole time. His face was indifferent, but his heart fell straight into the bottomless abyss. Murong Cheng said she was a scourge, and Mu Zhenning more or less died because of her. The only thing that could subdue her was the dagger hidden in the cemetery. There are many things that cannot be studied deeply. Once you think about it, it will be like an invisible and airtight net, covering the sky and covering the sky. The dagger was made from her bones. What does it mean that she put it in front of Mu Zhenning's grave? Life is not the same quilt and death is the same hole? He was just a stranger to her. When she first got married, she took the initiative to treat him and pestered him every day. Was it really because she liked him? If you really like, how can you not care about the other person's body? Even if his hand turned into a monster in the end, wouldn't she care? Innocent and innocent, ignorant and ignorant, she has been a ghost for decades. How innocent can she be? How ignorant can you be? Is she naive and ignorant, or is he deceiving himself? After thinking about this, Gul Yang was already in a cold sweat. Daoist Miaoqing finished the needle application, and advised him, "You can do it yourself," then put away the needle box, got up and left. Gul Yang sat alone in the study, muttering in a deep voice, "The pink skull." That night, Gul Yang didn't go back to the bedroom to rest, but stayed in the study all the time. In the middle of the night, Tang Tang came in rubbing his sleepy eyes, walked up to him, and naturally climbed onto his lap and curled up in a petite posture, with a soft voice, "Gul Yang, why haven't you finished your work yet?" He randomly pulled out a document, bowed his head and kissed her forehead. "Hey, go to sleep first." "If you're not here, I can't sleep," she murmured delicately, scratching his chest with her little hand, and there was a sweet smell on her body, like a ripe peach, so sweet and so tender. Gul Yang couldn't help but tighten her grip, and said in a low voice, "Be obedient, I'll accompany you when I'm done." She snuggled up to him, resting her shoulder comfortably. "I'm going to wait for you here." Gul Yang couldn't drive her away, so he could only let her cling to him. After pretending to flip through a few pages of documents, the person in her arms was completely silent, and she fell asleep. Gul Yang sighed silently, and carried Tang Tang back to the bedroom, but he himself had no sleepiness, and sat by the bed all night. A few days later, it was still the same. Tang Tang seemed to be aware of Gu Liang's indifference. After pestering him twice, she never went to look for him in the study, occasionally met Taoist Miaoqing at home, she ignored him and went her own way. Probably because Gu Liang didn't give her another chance to nourish the evil, the treatment went smoothly, and the cinnabar seal moved to the palm. At most 2 more injections, it should be cured, Taoist Miaoqing said. Thank you, Taoist Gu Liang thanked lightly. Standing up to see off the guests, he saw Tang Tang standing expressionlessly at the door of the study, staring at them coldly, neither angry nor happy. Then, she turned and went back to the room without saying a word. Blessed to have each other in this life, mused Shao, your wife is born again. Author, Hua Hua Liao. Chapter 1495. Tang Tang stood in front of the window, quietly looking at the endless night sky outside, with a bright moon looming amidst the haze and mist. The night is getting darker. She was wondering, would Gu Liang go back to her room to sleep tonight? After thinking about it for a while, she thought it shouldn't be. If the Taoist priest doesn't leave, Gu Liang will never return to her side. Even if they left, the rift had already been placed between the two of them, shining brightly, and it was impossible to pretend not to see it. She asked Gu Liang if she would be needed after he was cured. Gu Liang said he was reluctant. If it weren't for the idea of giving up already in my heart, how could I feel reluctant? Everyone is like this, saying that they are reluctant, that they have difficulties, that they have to, all kinds of embarrassing reasons, just to be more confident when abandoning her. The night is getting darker. The surrounding area was so quiet that no sound could be heard. Tang Tang walked barefoot on the floor, like a ghost, wandering silently in the corridor on the 2nd floor. The Taoist priest was already asleep, and there was no movement in the room. She opened the door and went in, and saw a figure sleeping soundly on the bed. Kill him. The thoughts in my mind are getting stronger and stronger. Just kill him and everything will be back on track. Creak creak. Creak creak. The nails elongated ferociously, like gray and decayed bones, and also like fangs that were unbearably hungry. Her pitch-black pupils shrank slightly, and she suddenly pinched the opponent's neck. However, in the next instant, her face changed drastically. The Taoist priest on the bed turned into a paper prick figure in her hands. The twisted head rolled off the bed, and the papery face was painted with bright red and ridiculous rouge, as if silently mocking her. Tang Tang's eyes widened, and a chill ran down his spine. This is not a stinky Taoist priest, this is a Taoist substitute technique. The room was suddenly brightly lit. Tang Tang looked at the person at the door, his mind went blank, and he felt as if he was in a dream. Gu Liang is here, Taoist Miaoqing is here, and Tongwu is also here. The evil spirit's nature cannot be changed. Seeing that I spoiled her good deeds, she wanted to take my life. This is an unforgivable crime, the Taoist shouted angrily. Tongwu said, Ma'am, Master Gu has treated you so well, how can you repay your kindness with revenge? Tang Tang stared at Gu Liang in a daze. After watching for a while, she pursed her lips and smiled sweetly at him as usual. Gu Liang, I'm just angry that he keeps bullying you. I won't dare next time. Don't be angry, okay? Gu Liang looked at her blankly, his eyes were dark, like a dead pool of water. The tip of her nose was sore, she mustered up the courage to move, walked in front of him, and gently tugged at the corner of his clothes. Gu Liang, I know I was wrong, don't be angry with me, okay? Tang Tang, he finally spoke out, his voice gloomy and hoarse, what am I to you? A substitute for Mu Zheneng? It doesn't matter if you lack an arm. Tang Tang lowered her head and said softly, Gu Liang, you have lost your right hand, but you still have your left hand. Gu Liang laughed, the corners of his mouth kept rising, but there was no laughter. There was pain in his eyes, self-mockery, anger, and helplessness. In the end, all emotions boiled down to one sentence, Tang Tang, Let's go. Tang Tang stood still. Gu Liang didn't want to see her again, so he told Tong Wu, pack your luggage for the wife. After speaking, he strode away without looking back. Soon a servant came upstairs and cleaned up Tang Tang's clothes and supplies, and even put the toothbrush she had used on the sink into a suitcase. In just a short while, it seemed that everything she had here was erased. Trace. The servants at home didn't know what happened, they thought it was a husband and wife quarreling, and they didn't dare to ask more questions. Tang Tang stayed with her luggage on the side of the road outside the gate of the courtyard. The soft-hearted maid couldn't bear to see her pitiful, and persuaded, Madam, sir is getting angry, don't wait here, be careful of frostbite. Please intercede for me, okay? Tell him, I really know I was wrong, she begged softly, trying to look as good as possible. The maid sighed in embarrassment, Ma'am, you'd better wait for the husband to calm down before coming back, and go back to your mother's house to avoid it. After finishing speaking, he hurried into the courtyard, and the courtyard door was closed tightly again. Tang Tang stared blankly at the gate of the courtyard. Family. No, she no longer has a home. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Blessed to have each other in this life, Mu Shao, your wife is born again. Author, Hua Hua Liao. Chapter 1496. Tang Tang had nowhere to go, she had never used the Ruan family as a shelter, and now she was suddenly kicked out, she was at a loss for a while. I can't even accept it, it's like dreaming. The night in late autumn was chilly, she sat on the suitcase, staring blankly at the closed carved iron door. At 6 o'clock, the sky was bright, and Gu Liang's car came back from outside. Tang Tang hurriedly stood up, clinging to the last glimmer of hope in her heart. However, the people in the car never got out, and only stayed at the door for a moment, and then drove straight in after the courtyard door opened. Going around the open lawn in the courtyard and the layered flower beds, the car stopped at the entrance of the front hall, and Gu Liang got out of the car, smelling of alcohol. Walking into the living room, the servant took off his coat, prepared slippers, and handed him hot tea. Sir, my wife was outside last night, the maid couldn't help but mention it. There was no expression on Gu Liang's face. He took a sip of tea, rinsed out the smell of alcohol in his mouth and taste buds were filled with a bitter taste, then he put down the teacup and went upstairs to his room. The room had been tidied up, and after a hangover, he had an unbearable headache, so he closed his eyes and lay down on the bed to rest. The pillow and bedding have obviously been replaced with new ones, but her breath still lingers in her breath, light and faint, seemingly lingering. Gu Liang sat up with his head supported, silent for a while, his eyes fell on a pot of crabapple flowers by the window. The mood is like a tide. Even at this point, he still can't see through her. He couldn't help but wonder if she had premeditated her choice of him. Is it because he has the strength to compete with Murongchang? Otherwise, anyone would let Murongchang take her away. Can't think about it anymore. Gu Liang pinched the center of his eyebrows, his headache was about to split. He walked out of the room and ordered the servant to throw out the pot of crabapple flowers. The farther you throw it, the better, he said. When having breakfast the next day, the servant asked Gu Liang cautiously, Sir, do you want to call the Ruan family? It would be good if they send someone to pick up your wife. Gu Liang was slightly stunned, his movements froze for a moment, and he asked, Is she still outside? That's right. The servant's face was troubled, my wife has been guarding outside. In such a cold day, my body will not be able to bear it. Gu Liang was silent for a while, then continued to eat breakfast. Don't worry about her. The servant bowed his head and said yes, not daring to mention such things again. Probably everyone has a weak heart, Tang Tang always looks like a child in Gu's family, although she is coquettish and arrogant. To the servants, she is much easier to get along with than those noble ladies who like to talk softly and sarcastically. The maid took some sandwiches and milk from the kitchen, packed them in paper bags, and sent them to Tang Tang outside. "Madam, you haven't eaten for 2 days, so let's pad your stomach first." Tang Tang said, "Thank you." The sound is like rough sandpaper grinding on the bark, fragmented and hoarse. "Gu Liang, did he forgive me? Can you help me talk to him, okay? Tell him, I know I was wrong, and tell him not to be angry with me. Madam, you should go back to your mother's house to avoid it for a while. When the husband calms down, he will definitely send someone to pick you up. How can this couple live without quarreling?" Tang Tang listened quietly, with no trace of life on her pale face. Gu Liang really doesn't want her anymore. Just like Mu Zhenning didn't want her, they didn't want her anymore. She turned around and walked forward slowly, not knowing where to go. After all, there was no room for her here. The servant called her from behind, "Madam, your luggage." Tang Tang didn't seem to hear, just walked forward step by step. There was a lot of rubbish piled up in the trash can by the side of the road. She saw her crabapple flowers lying in it, the leaves were yellow and the flowers withered. She pulled the begonia flower out of the trash, wiped the soil on the ceramic pot, and carefully carried it into her arms. Now, she finally accepted the fact that Gu Liang didn't want her anymore. Blessed to have each other in this life, Mu Shao, your wife is born again. Author, Hua Hua Liao. Chapter 1497. Tang Tang carried the begonia flowers to the cemetery. She didn't have any money with her, and the taxi driver saw that she was dumbfounded and came to the cemetery early in the morning. He suspected that he had encountered a delirious lunatic, so he thought he was unlucky and didn't bother her much. Tang Tang found Mu Zhenning's tombstone, turned over the bricks, and found that the dagger he had hidden underneath was missing. She knelt and sat in front of the tomb blankly, full of confusion. That dagger was very important to her. Not only is it a magic weapon that can restrain her, but it is also the evidence of her existence in the world. The dagger melted into her bones. If one day, she disappears like green smoke, that dagger is the only thing that can prove her existence. A sense of existence is a good thing. It allows us to be recognized, valued, and psychologically satisfied and happy. Some people publish books and innovate products in professional fields, making the world feel their existence. Some people leave handwriting of their visit in tourist attractions, which is also a childish expression of seeking a sense of existence. And our tireless posting status, photos, and videos are also subconsciously seeking responses from the outside world. Those responses make us feel our own existence and the reality that is different from nothingness. What if you can't feel your own existence? Probably, it will be boundless loneliness, like being in a cold and desolate place. Tang Tang leaned against Mu Zhenning's tombstone, feeling cold and hard. That warm embrace is now only a fantasy. To her, Mu Zhenning was always different. Because Mu Zhenning only had her. There are always many people in everyone's life. If one is missing, there are others to make up for. But during those wandering days, she and Mu Zhenning depended on each other for life. Each other was unique and irreplaceable. Of course, she was still wrong in the end. Even though they were so intimate, he still chose to save Muzi and abandoned her. She looked up at the sky. It was dazzling white, so far away, so big. She felt more and more at a loss. Has been raised by others, never lived alone. Mu Zhenning, I miss you so much. She whispered, and slowly closed her eyes next to the tombstone. I miss him teaching her to write by hand. I miss him cooking for her according to the recipe. I miss his low voice reading bedtime stories. Maybe he wasn't that kind to her actually, but what to do? When she was vulnerable, she could only rummage and rummage through these memories, pick out the good ones, and warm herself. Tang Tang slept in front of the tomb for a while, but when she woke up her hands and feet were numb from the cold. She barely stood up, said goodbye to Mu Zenning's tombstone, picked up the flower pot, and staggered out. I don't know where to go, anyway, I just walk along the road, I go wherever I go, and it's all the same wherever I go. She walked for a long time. From the remote cemetery, I walked all the way to the urban area, and I couldn't walk anymore, so I sat on the waiting chair at the bus station to rest. There was an old cardboard box not far away, and there was a cat meowing in the cardboard box, and the sound seemed small and weak in the street where cars were passing by. It seems that when it is time to leave work and school, the passing vehicles gradually become denser, some people get on, some get off, and people come and go. Tang Tang rested her chin and looked at the cardboard box, wondering if someone would take those cats away. The two female students got off the bus and stopped when they passed the cardboard boxes. Ah, so cute. I picked up one and stroked it, it was fluffy, and I couldn't put it down. Can your parents let you have a cat? Probably not, my mother thinks that small animals lose their hair. The female student put the kitten back into the cardboard box and sighed, oh, I really can't bear it. Then the two left. After a while, a young couple passed by. The girl said, who threw this cat, it's so pitiful. The boy pulled his girlfriend forward, don't worry about it, it's so dirty, maybe there is an infectious disease. The two also left. Blessed to have each other in this life, Mu Shao, your wife is born again. Author, Hua Hua Liao. Chapter 1498. Tang Tang didn't know how many hours he waited. For no reason, she insisted on seeing the end of these cats, so she kept waiting, waiting. Many people pass by. Tease the cat, touch the cat, and leave easily after being happy. The parents won't allow it, the landlord won't let it, there is a dog at home, there are children at home, cleaning is troublesome, the cat's meowing disturbs the people, maybe the cat is sick, maybe the cat has fleas. A 7 or 8-year-old girl ran to the cardboard box and waved to her mother, Mom. Hurry up, there are kittens here, can I take them home? Her mother came over with the bag and frowned, take it back and you'll be fresh for 2 days and forget about it. No, I don't care, Mom, I want to raise a kitten. Then can you take care of them? Feed them every day, accompany them, take them to the doctor when they are sick, and not throw them away because they are tired. Can you do this? I can do it, Mom, just let me raise them. The mother sighed and picked up the 2 kittens from the cardboard box. Okay, can we go now? Mom, there's a black one in there. No, you can only raise 2 at most, and black cats are unlucky, let's go, we are going home. The little girl turned her head to look around, and finally followed her mother up and down. At this time, the street has become very deserted, there are not many people, the temperature also drops with the sunset, and the air is cold. Tang Tang stood up, walked slowly to the side of the cardboard box, squatted down, and there was still a thin and small black cat inside. She reached out and touched it. It used her finger as a toy, held it in its mouth, and bit it. The little fangs are very sharp, but they don't have much strength. She didn't feel any pain or itchiness, instead she smiled slightly, little thing, aren't you afraid of me? Maybe it's because cats are inherently yin, and black cats are even more yin and evil, so they won't reject her. She hugged the little black cat in her arms, stroked its soft fur, and said softly, no one wants you, and I don't want anyone, let's be together from now on, don't worry, I won't abandon you, never mind. I feel a little better, and feel like I finally have a companion. She unwrapped the sandwich the maid had given her, fed the cat with the tuna mince inside, and then gave it some milk. With someone to take care of, Tang Tang got a little bit more motivated, looked at the darkening sky, and decided to find a place to sleep first. She found a hotel with the cat in her arms and was told that pets were not allowed. She searched for several hotels, all of which were rejected. She didn't know what to do, never dealt with this situation. When she was at a loss, her cat began to vomit and diarrhea, its small body curled up weakly, and even its meowing became much quieter. She was looking for a hospital on the street in a panic, and the dense electronic light-emitting billboards made people dazzled. The kitten in her hand was her last support at the moment. If the cat was gone, she would be left alone. After finally finding a pet hospital, the doctor didn't give her a good face and scolded her, "Young cats can't drink milk, don't you know? Do you know about lactose intolerance? Pets are life, you young girls keep cats and raise them before the dog, can you do your homework first? Don't understand anything, isn't this a waste of life?" Tang Tang was dumbfounded by the scolding. She looked at the doctor and murmured, I don't know, no one taught me." After finishing speaking, for some reason, the backlog of emotions suddenly overwhelmed, the eyes were hot, and the tears burst out instantly, rushing out like a raging tide. The crying clogged her throat, and she couldn't even speak. Being kicked out of the house, she didn't cry. Suffering hunger and cold outside, she didn't cry. Gu Liang refused to forgive her, she didn't cry. But the doctor blamed her for feeding the cat milk, she cried out of breath, and died in pain. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Blessed to have each other in this life, Mu Shao, your wife is born again. Author, Hua Hua Liao. Chapter 1499. Tang Tang's crying was so painful that passers-by outside looked infrequently. The doctor's assistant took Tang Tang to the lounge inside to avoid being watched. The assistant was a girl with a round face. She poured a cup of hot water for Tang Tang and patiently explained, "The doctor didn't mean to get angry at you on purpose. A girl sent a dog before. The doctor ordered him to take care of him, and he was even more sick, and he was already dead when he was sent here today, so the doctor was in such a hurry." Tang Tang nodded with tears streaming down her face. After sitting for a while, the doctor came in with the cat in his arms, and returned the cat to Tang Tang. His tone was also very stiff, "I have already fed the medicine, and it is fine. I will feed the milk specially for kittens in the future. When it recovers, remember to nurse it vaccine." Tang Tang wiped away tears and asked, "Where can I buy it?" The doctor was frightened by her crying, and beckoned to his assistant to take her to buy it. There was an area in the pet hospital full of pet supplies. Tang Tang bought cat food and canned food, and picked out a pet travel backpack. When it was time to check out, she suddenly realized that she had no money, so she handed the cat to the assistant and said, "I don't have any money with me, wait a minute." Hurrying out of the pet hospital, I vaguely heard the doctor complaining inside, "I guess I won't come back, this is a hospital, not a shelter." His assistant said, "No, her dress is a famous brand. If you don't lack this money, you will definitely come back." Tang Tang went to a pawn shop to pawn off her wedding ring. With money, she and her cat can live a good life from now on. It's just that I'm used to being led by others, and now I have to make my own decisions about everything, so I'm inevitably confused and at a loss. At midnight, standing at an empty intersection, she hesitated which way to go. Suddenly the bell rang. Jingle bell, crisp and ethereal, endless. As if guiding her. Her eyes gradually lost focus, and her body was like a puppet, slowly following the ringtone. When she regained consciousness, she was lying on the ground with a wet smell of mud in her breath. He wanted to get up, but he was dizzy in the dark. Her cat gnawed at her hair, pulling her scalp so painfully, the insignificant pain forced her to wake up as soon as possible. She took a deep breath and forced herself up again. Jingle bell, jingle bell. The bell rang again. This time, the ringtone was no longer crisp and sweet, but pierced into her joints like a sharp needle, nailing her to the ground. Looking sideways, I saw countless red threads wrapped around the limbs, and yellow talismans hanging on the red threads, and further up, there were countless dark candles fluttering around. The Taoist priest sat cross-legged in the distance, holding a copper bell in his hand, chanting words. After reading for a while, he said, "It is a calamity for a soul to transform into a ghost, and it is another calamity for a ghost to transform into an evil spirit. Wouldn't it be a pity that you can become an evil god and live in the secular world? As long as you recognize me as the master, you will be under my control. Ghost bell, I will build a temple statue for you, and you will be worshipped by people from now on, and you will have endless incense and endless wealth." Tang Tang's vision was blurred, and her breathing became more and more difficult. She knew that the Taoist priest had set up a formation to force her out of her current body. It must have been planned for a long time to prepare so well. She felt that she was unlucky, but she wanted to laugh for some reason. Finally, she laughed and shed tears. She asked him in a hoarse voice, "You caused me to be kicked out, just to drive me." The Taoist waved his hand, not knowing whether it was cinnabar or something. The surrounding candles grew brighter. "That's natural," the Taoist said, his dead wood-like face flickering in the light of the candlelight. "The evil god can command hundreds of ghosts, and it's a waste of money for you to stay there. Why don't you recognize me as the master? I can give you everything. Incense. Sacrifice. Men or women, old people or children, I can give you whatever you want." Tang Tang closed her eyes and murmured, "You can't give." The bell is ringing again. The Taoist chanting sound drilled into her brain like a spell. "Accept me as Lord, enter my ghost bell, accept me as Lord, enter my ghost bell." The cat will be of great use later, so it's not about making up the number of words. Blessed to have each other in this life, Mu Shao, your wife is born again. Author, Hua Hua Liao. Chapter 1500. Accept me as the master, and enter my ghost bell. The sound made her head almost split open. His chest heaved violently, but he was so painful that he couldn't breathe. The body is gradually losing consciousness, and the consciousness is being torn apart little by little. She doesn't want to enter the ghost bell. The right way invites the gods, and the ones who invite are San King Yuanzun and Thunder God. Evil ways arrest ghosts, and what are arrested are wandering ghosts, monsters, and spirits. Controlling ghosts as servants has existed since ancient times, but there are countless little ghosts in the world, but evil gods are hard to come by. If the evil spirit can be trapped in the ghost bell, when the bell rings, all ghosts will obey, and the bell holder can almost do whatever they want. It's just that the evil god is fierce, so he had to do everything possible to calculate, get rid of her support, weaken her body, and then wait for her to lose energy and lose her mind. At this time, she will start to act and lure her into the game. In order to refine the most sinister and evil ghosts, some people searched everywhere for suitable virgins and virgins at all costs. And in order to get the evil god, his mere means are not worth mentioning at all. Seeing that he was about to accomplish something, the corners of his mouth rose slightly, and greed appeared in his eyes. That righteous and awe-inspiring face has long been unsightly, leaving only a sinister and ugly face. He stared straight at the woman in the center of the circle, so engrossed that he ignored the gradually approaching figure behind him. The candle light flickered, his pupils shrank slightly, as if he had sensed something. He was about to turn his head, when his eyes suddenly went dark. Boom! The solid brick smashed a flower of blood on the forehead. Seeing the Taoist priest collapse to the ground, the old man dared to take a breath. He didn't dare to delay any longer. He quickly put the Taoist priest's backpack on his body, and then rushed to the center of the circle to help Tang Tang up. "Hurry up! If you're late, you won't be able to leave," Huang Logui urged, while quickly tearing away the red string and talisman paper on her body. The candle overturned, and the flame burned along the red string soaked in wax oil. Tang Tang felt weak all over, and forced herself to carry the pet's luggage on her back. Many human-shaped black figures appeared indistinctly around the house, some of them were only covered with fog, and some of them had fangs clearly visible, and they were full of hostility. The little black cat frowned, meowed, and jumped into the backpack. My God! How many ghosts did this guy raise? They're all out. The old ghost Huang was startled and frightened, spat, and dragged Tang Tang to run out desperately. The candle flames formed a large area, igniting the rotten wood and old sundries in the empty room, and the burning became more and more prosperous. Those ghosts slowly gathered around the Taoist priest, layer upon layer, getting denser and denser. Tang Tang followed Huang Logui to the door, stopped, and looked back at the Taoist priests surrounded by ghosts. Controlling ghosts as servants is like a hunter taming animals to work for him. If a little ghost is a dog, a fierce ghost is a jackal. Even a lion, a tiger. The stronger the hunter is, the more dangerous it is. Once the hunter is injured and weak, he will face the fiercest revenge of the beast. Throughout the ages, most of the ghost raisers did not die well because of the backlash. Tang Tang shook off Huang Logui's hand, suddenly turned around and rushed in. Huang Logui died in a panic. Why did you run back again? Hey! You are dying. She ran over in one breath, took advantage of Li Gui's attention on the Taoist priest, quickly snatched the imperial ghost bell from the Taoist priest's hand, and then returned to the door without leaving a moment. One or two ghosts noticed her, and Yuya followed, but they were stopped by the raging flames. The flames reflected the ghosts, hazy and distorted, making it difficult to tell whether the ghosts floating in the fire were eerie ghosts or burning monsters. Thick smoke. Huang Logui only waited for Tang Tang to come out, and immediately closed the door. Fearing that the out-of-control ghosts would come out to trouble him, he kept grabbing a few withered grasses and branches nearby, and threw them through the broken windows of the abandoned house. After throwing several handfuls, seeing that the fire was about to burn through the roof, he pulled Tang Tang up and ran away. Hurry up! Hurry up! Otherwise, the nearby villagers will regard us as arsonists.